Well, so this is the third episode of Catholic Reboot, and it's actually part two of the Angel series. There will actually be a part three. So the first part of the angels is what are angels? This is who are all the angels, the different classes of angels. So we refer to this as the nine choir of angels. Um, I have to tell you, my intention with this whole channel, Catholic Reboot, was to attempt to help reboot others' knowledge of their Catholic faith, and I'm finding that I'm actually rebooting my own knowledge. There's quite a bit I did not know, as especially when I went through the angels. I think the bigger reason is after Vatican II, there were two what I call assaults on the faith. One was actually three, but one was the devotions to the Blessed Mother. It seemed that the priests were trying to distance themselves from these types of devotions. And I would remember being a young kid, and they were frowning on saying the Rosary before Mass. They were trying to eliminate novenas and devotions. The second was that they were actually dismissing angels. It was kind of like fairy tale to them, and so they just weren't educating the young faithful on angels. I kind of had to reach back and, for the most part, learn for the first time. I think the third attack was most definitely on the mass itself. But going through all this, I think it's quite educational. I hope you find it educational. So we will discuss the nine choirs of angels and the hierarchy within those choirs. Um, they refer to them as spheres. So there's three spheres of angels, and then there are individual classes, or what we would call choirs, within each of those spheres. Um, when when getting done with this, then I'm going to actually finish up with just the archangels. So have a third part that just focuses on the archangels, because as you will come to learn through this episode, that is the choir of angels, or the class of angels that is most involved with man, including regular angels. So to get started, let me kind of just give an overview of the spheres. So the first sphere of angels includes the seraphim, the cherubim, and what they call the throne of angels. The second sphere uh, consists of dominions, powers, and virtues. Now, again, I've heard these terms before, never actually knew that that was a separate class or a separate choir of angels. The third sphere, and this is the sphere that most has to deal with us as man, is the principalities, the archangels, and the angels. Um, so, going through these nine choirs, we find the importance or the purpose of these angels themselves. Now, in this first class, the very first choir is called the Seraphim. Uh, Many of you may remember singing the song "Hail, Holy Queen, enthroned above." You'll hear that one verse that discusses the seraphim and cherubim. Now we just thought it was a very beautiful song. Never really understood the importance of those two classes of angels mentioned in that song, but you'll come to find out why, because of the high status of them, right? So the seraphim, which is a Hebrew word that means to burn. Um, Out of all the angels, the seraphim have the most intimate knowledge of God, and they are constantly meditating on the Holy Trinity. So, the great mystery of the Holy Trinity. Um, and because they comprehend God with this great clarity. It's almost as if they were given the gift to know God the best. It's almost impossible for them to sin against God. So it would be a contradiction against their nature or being as the seraphim choir of angels. This is interesting because in the hierarchy, I always thought when I heard of Lucifer's betrayal or attack on God that he must have come from the highest class of angels, and he actually did not. And he came from the cherubim class. Uh, so this is the second choir of the angels. Now, what's important to understand is that the seraphim, because of this hierarchy, they actually teach the cherubim. Okay, so the cherubim would their primary responsibility is to contemplate God as a person, but also to understand His divine plan. So they somewhat master what they call fullness of wisdom of uh, who God is, what the Trinity is, and what that divine plan is from the Trinity. But they're taught that, so it's not inherent as it is with the seraphim. They have to learn it, right? So this makes a lot of sense that Lucifer would have uh, denied serving man, right? I just always understood that God had informed uh, Lucifer specifically that they would be serving man, but that actually came from the seraphim. Okay, so that hierarchy, it was there that uh, that the Lucifer as a cherubim class would come out and say, "I will not serve," and therefore denied God. Right? If he was a seraphim, it would have been almost impossible because it would have gone against his nature to do so. So, and this is not to say that the seraphim don't have free will as well. They do. It's just that because they're so close to God and understand with that burning love, it's just impossible for them not to be obedient. Right? So we've always heard the story that if we ever experienced God as humans, we would die immediately. Powerful knowledge we wouldn't be able to contain. Or we heard about as Moses uh, saw God, he went gray, right? From sheer power. Right? So this kind of ties that together pretty well. So now we know that the seraphim basically educate the cherubim. Um, when we go down to the next choir, what I like to call class, right? It's called the thrones. Now, I just thought the thrones of angels was just a large gathering of angels, but it's not. It's an actual class or choir of angels. And their principal responsibility is the judicial power of God. Okay? So if you think about a king sitting on the throne to give a mandate, that's always been very judicial. The king declares something from the throne. Similarly, why they were given the classification as the thrones of angels, right? So they learn the divine person from the cherubim. So this all kind of goes class to class. And because of their knowledge, they they are principally required to be involved with judgment. Whenever we hear about the banishment from Eden, when we hear about the flood of Noah or Sodom and Gomorrah, it's this choir of angels or class of angels that are responsible for passing on this divine knowledge to the second sphere. Okay, so as we leave the first sphere of angels, what we're learning is that they are more of this educated class of angels that have to understand God's divine plan and then have to understand at the final level how it needs to be enacted. And so then all this knowledge comes down to the second sphere of angels. And I know it sounds complicated, but imagine God's great um, knowledge. He had formed countless angels for these types of tasks. Accordingly, there would have been a class system, right? All right. So in the second sphere, and by the way, I'll put up a tile that will provide scripture to support everything we're discussing here, right? So for those that want to hear it from the scripture, not just someone's interpretation, there's exact emphasis in scripture to these different choirs of angels. Okay, so the dominions are the first class of the second sphere. They're also called dominations. The word dominions comes from the Latin word dominus, which means master or lord. So the dominions are the angels of authority, and they are believed to be the leaders of this second sphere of angelic hierarchy. And they pass on the orders of knowledge of God that they receive from the thrones from the first class, who are under their charge. So the dominions are under the charge the thrones of angels. So they will oversee the affairs guarding the universe and protecting it from harm. So we understand the vastness of the universe. It You would imagine every black hole, every solar eclipse, every burning out star, there is a plan for why this happens. And the dominions oversee that in the universe. The second class within the second sphere are called the powers. Again, when I heard powers of angels, I assumed the powers of all angels. No, this is a certain class of angels. They're also called the authorities. Um, it's believed that the powers fight the forces of evil that destroy God's creation. So if Satan and his demons were to make an effort to destroy the earth by manipulating the forces of the universe, let's say through a great asteroid or a solar flare, um, this choir of angels will prevent them from doing that. We've always said, what if this asteroid decides to come into our solar system or come into our atmosphere and destroy the earth? This choir of angels are the ones that protect us from that. Now, I'm going to pause here for a second and say you'll notice that, much like in the very first episode where we talked about um, sanctifying grace and the reason we were born to know, to love, to serve, that as man, as we start pulling away from our primary duty, and we stop seeking the sanctifying graces, we pull away from Christ. Indirectly, we're actually pulling away from the choirs of the angels' purposes to protect us, because we are basically uh, demonstrating that we no longer need God's involvement in our lives. So if you start to see an increase in disasters, natural disasters, which we've seen quite a bit, you could almost see that the angels are saying, until you start returning back to your faith to God, we're going to start pulling back because you're moving away. You used to always hear that expression: if you think that God is no longer in your life, or God doesn't exist, guess who moved away? It's us, our fallen nature pulling away. All right, so that's what the powers or the authority angels are required to do, is to protect the universe and things that go on in it. Now, the third class of angels in this second sphere are called virtues. Again, always thought they were referring to the virtues of all angels. No, the virtues is a specific class, and it means might, power, energy, the angel. So it's believed that they oversee the movement of the planets, the stars, and the forces of nature, and they make sure the universe operates according to God's original design. So where the powers angels are protecting, the virtue angels are the ones that oversee the movement. What you will notice as we come down the classes of angels, every time we go down another level, the worker bee angels start to appear. And you'll see that. All right, so that is the virtue angels are the final class or choir within the second sphere. Now we move into the final sphere of angels, which is the third sphere. Um, this sphere is where the duties to us human beings starts to play out, right? So the first class of the third sphere are called the principalities. Now, I've heard principalities uh, being referred to angels, but I thought it was more demographic principalities, almost like logistically where angels operate. But it once again, it is a class of angels. Um, the principalities are guardian angels, but they're guardian angels not over man, but over nations and cities. I never knew this. So imagine there is a guardian angel over the United States, and there's also a guardian angel over the major cities in the United States based on the requirements. Um, they are also in this class evil principalities within this class of angels. Now, this makes a lot of sense because when you get into the working class of angels, since they're further down the hierarchy, they can be influenced by a higher level class of angels. So they believe that because Lucifer was of the cherubim class, which is that second class in the first sphere, these are the angels he pulled away from God. So this was his legions of demons. And uh, in Daniel, the prophet, he discussed this. And again, I'll give you the actual biblical verse, but he was told by an angel that there was a spiritual power referred to as the Prince of Persia. And I want to do more research into that. Who that angel was in contact with um, until um, Saint Michael the archangel came to his aid. So this is interesting that within this class there is a movement of aid, right? Now, the principalities are on the first level of the third sphere. Saint Michael is an archangel, which is the next class in the third sphere. And again, I'll give a tile that'll show all these hierarchies. So this makes better sense. So when we get into the second class, or this choir class of angels in the third sphere, it's called the archangels, right? Now, archangels are special. They are guardian angels, but they are guardian angels for very special individuals. So everyone would say, I always wanted to know if my guardian angel was an archangel. And you could be a very special person. Uh, God has plans for you, and so would assign you an archangel. But generally, when we see archangels or hear about archangels, we generally say, well, over the Pope, over the Blessed Mother. We heard the archangel came to Mary regarding the Annunciation, came to Saint Joseph to talk about leaving to protect the Christ child. That was an archangel that came. What makes it extremely strange is that even though the angelic hosts as a whole consists of innumerable amounts of angels, sacred scripture and sacred tradition indicates that there are only seven angels who have this rank. And I'm going to go in, and in the previous episode, when I said what are angels, at the very end, you may remember seeing the list of archangels, their names, the meaning of their names, and their purpose. I'm going to put that tile back up in this episode, and then also put it up in the final episode of Angels, when all we're going to discuss is this class of angels, these archangels. Now, the final choir of angels, which is the third class within the third sphere, is referred to as just regular angels, right? This is where our guardian angels come from. This is probably the most worker bee of all angels, because their main purpose is to look after the affairs of us, man, and to deliver the divine revelation to us, right, throughout our life. Now, imagine all that information is coming down from higher classes of angels, rests on the guardian angel, right? Throughout scripture and throughout our lives, we're always discussing angels. This is the class of angels we're most familiar with. You'll notice I had an empty chair in the first discussion of angels to reference my guardian angel. That's the angels. So I hope this helps. This will give you an understanding of how powerful not only God is, but how powerful the influences are within the universe and for mankind, and that this isn't a fairy tale. These nine choirs of angels um, were created specifically to bring God and man together. And so you could see all these worker bees and different levels of angels. The bigger question is, how will we rank, right, uh, when we get to heaven, if we're fortunate enough to get to heaven, among these nine choir of angels, right? St. Francis had made the comment that if he saw an angel walking down the street, and then he saw a priest walking down the street, he would first show reverence to the priest. And that was kind of his way of saying, because we're bound to earth and we have to suffer original sin, and we have to potentially save our soul, when we come to heaven, we actually will be in a higher status. We don't know. This is all going to be revealed to us when when we get to heaven, or when we're judged. But it's good to know this. It's good to teach this. I mean, rather than have your kids watch Disney stuff, it'd be good to flashcard them through the nine choirs of angels. So I hope it helps, and I'll see you in the fourth episode, which is the third, which is the archangels. Thank you, and God bless.